Hello and welcome back to today's Photo Minute by the Photo Classroom. My name's Brian Osborne and it's great to be back with you today with another tip that I think will be helpful for our general photography and especially applying to using our tripods. We'll do another segment on tripod suggestions, but what we're going to talk about today is the optical stabilization feature that's built into many of our cameras and into our lenses as well. It's a great feature because it helps take out the kind of shake that you and I might experience when we're trying to hold steady, when we have maybe a little bit slower shutter speed than we should be trying to hand hold our equipment. The stabilization can really give us sharp images even when we're not in an ideal situation. It's not available on all lenses or all cameras, but many of our lenses that we may already own have that feature. And you would often know just by seeing, usually on the side of the lens, you'll see a OS for optical stabilizer, IS for image stabilization, VR as Nikon's term for vibration reduction. But you'll see that feature either as a manual switch on the side of the lens, and on a lot of newer lenses, you'll actually go into the menu of the camera and be able to turn on the optical stabilization feature via the electronics that are built into the menu itself. The question is, why might you actually want to turn it off? Because it sounds like it'd be a very, very helpful feature. And the one time that you definitely want to make sure you turn it off is when you put your camera on a tripod. When you put your camera on a tripod, obviously there shouldn't be any movement, and yet when you leave the stabilization feature on, the camera or the lens mechanism actually thinks that it has a job to do. It can actually create a blur in your pictures because it was left on. Now this varies greatly between different brands and of cameras and or lenses. I know that on the Nikon or Canon, it would be something I'd definitely test out to see if it's going to be an issue. On the Sigma lenses that I often own, it is a big issue. I will literally ruin a picture if I leave the stabilization on by accident when I'm on a tripod. And so you want to make sure that you test that, make sure that that's the case. And certainly the best operating procedure is to make sure that you turn that off anytime that you're on a tripod. One of the things that you might do just to get the camera in your hands this afternoon, though, is put your camera on a tripod, use various lenses or the different camera settings, and take a picture with and without the stabilizer turned on and see if there is a difference on your system. I know for my camera and my lenses, it definitely is a big deal. And one of the things I'm going to post is some sample pictures as well, along with this video showing you just how much of an effect, how much of a blur it can cause if you forget to turn off the stabilization feature, as well as a little trick that I suggest for many of my students, and that is that you can put a sticker right on the back of the tripod head that reminds you to turn off that stabilization feature when you decide to put your camera on a tripod. Some of you may also ask that there are, on some lenses, there are multiple stabilization modes. For example, on some of the Sigma lenses, there's an OS1 and an OS2. On some of the Nikon lenses, as well as the Canon lenses, there's also an IS1, IS2, or a VR standard, a normal, and a VR sports. And you definitely want to check the instruction manual on your specific equipment, but in general, the number one mode is the one that you would use to help stabilize your pictures in general. The number two mode is usually used for panning, so that it's going to stabilize the motion of the camera up and down, but it's not going to try to stabilize the motion of the camera swinging from left to right. So usually the number two mode, if you do have that on your specific equipment, is for a situation where you're either going to be panning, or if you're bouncing around in a vehicle, sometimes that's what that sport mode or that IS or OS2 mode is also for. Hey, we just want to give you some tips to try out today. Try with your stabilization on and without it on a tripod. You could even take some test shots at slower shutter speeds, handheld, and just see how well you can do in terms of holding that camera steady with the help of the image stabilization and without the help. That's today's Photo Minute by the Photo Classroom. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll be back tomorrow with some more helpful tips.